All right. Well, welcome to the encore recording of this training, the 9 webinar content formulas you can use to make more sales. I screwed up a bunch of things when I recorded it and did this live, and so I decided to re-record it just to give you a better quality recording to watch. And if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to help in whatever way I can. So let's dive in. The reason that I am doing this training to begin with is one of my clients I was chatting with recently, and she was talking about doing a webinar, and she was really nervous and a little overwhelmed by the formula that she had been taught because a lot of people have been in the space of getting trained on building out webinars by some very, very smart marketers out there. And one of them, this guy, Russell Brunson, doesn't matter if you know who he is or not, he has made quite a name for himself in interesting formulaic stuff where he's training people to put together sales funnels and webinars and launch sequences and all of that sort of thing. And one of the things he's really well known for, and I'm just looking at this particular book, is what he calls his perfect webinar formula. And the formula that he uses is one that we see quite a bit on a lot of sales webinars, particularly for services businesses, coaching businesses, consulting businesses, and it can be a bit of a stretch for some people, and this is the case for my client, in trying to get your stuff to fit in that model. And so I wanted to say, hey, look, there are many different ways to put a webinar together. In this training, we're going to look at 9 of them. Some of them are going to be the perfect fit for your business. Some of them may not be, and that's okay. And we'll explore some options and dive in to the structure of effective webinars in general. So let's dive into the training, shall we? Okay, so if you don't know me, by the way, my name is David Baer. I've been a marketer for a while. I've marketed in the classical music and theater industry, in the wine industry. I ran a Facebook ads agency for several years, and I currently do consulting work in the direct response marketing space. Working with a great number of clients in professional services, coaching, consulting, and so on. And what I want to do today is really dive into webinars, but webinars can be lots of different things to lots of different people. Nonetheless, they are incredibly effective. So I want to talk a little bit about why webinars are so very useful. And in this day and age of being at home or in an office where nobody else is working because of the pandemic, the idea of getting in front of an audience on the computer has become more and more and more common. And there are some people who have, what do they call it, Zoom fatigue, who are just not willing to do webinars. But I got to say, it's a slightly different scenario. And so understanding the difference between a Zoom meeting where you're interacting with people and a webinar where you are presenting in order to sell are two different animals. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. But why webinars? Well, webinars are ultimately quite easy to configure. Now, I say that, and a lot of people have been using Zoom. Zoom has a platform for webinars, and I got to say, it's not the best webinar platform, particularly not a great webinar platform for sales webinars. And so there are some other great things out there that I like to use for selling, some of which I think are top-notch, solid, some of which have a few too many bells and whistles. We're not going to get into that topic very much today, but happy to advise you on that topic if and when you are looking for a webinar platform. Okay, webinars are interactive. When I did my live webinar, I actually demonstrated how they can be interactive by running a poll with the people who were there to find out how many people had hosted a webinar before, or if they were looking to host a webinar. And so that was one of the things I demonstrated live at the webinar. I'm still kicking myself for not realizing the visual mistake I made, and my slides were not as easy to see as they ought to have been, and it was simply because I neglected to push a button. Oops. Operator error, as they say. Webinars are also measurable. So what do I mean by measurable? Well, in marketing, and this is what we're doing, right? This is marketing. We rely on data to tell us what's working and what's not. And webinars provide a lot of data for us. How many signups did we get? How many people showed up for the webinar? How many people stayed through the webinar? How many people bought from the webinar? So we can learn from each of these pieces, and that is all trackable in any decent piece of software. Webinars are integrated. You can integrate them to other tools like your email marketing platform, for example. You can also repeat the content. If I had the ability to publish this at the original video that I did, and then have it available for people to watch as an evergreen webinar, I would have done that. In addition, webinars are reusable, or I should say repurposable. So you can actually take a webinar and, as I plan to do with this video recording, put it in a place where either somebody has to opt in to get it, or I'm going to probably put this up on YouTube, for example, so that people can watch the content that I have produced for those folks on my list I invited. So those are a few reasons why webinars are so incredibly effective. What I didn't say is that you can reach more people. You can go worldwide with a webinar, and it's super cheap compared to like putting on a live seminar or a workshop in person. Something that we'll probably get back to at some point, but webinars are able to be able to help you reach many, many more people in many different places at the same time. And so that's really useful to know. So we're going to talk about how to structure webinars specifically for selling. And this is a really important point I want to make, because you can have all kinds of webinars. What we're talking about here today is webinars that are designed to help you sell your products or your services. The formulas that I'm going to be showing you are best for a certain type of webinar, or a certain type of business, I should say. Businesses that have offers around information, maybe it's training, maybe it's coaching, maybe it's consulting work or expertise, or services. So professional services like attorneys or insurance brokers or financial advisors. Those are all great types of businesses to be utilizing these formulas. Now, one really, really, really important point I want to make. Even if the person doesn't buy, they need to get a great experience from the content in the webinar. And that means that you need to design your webinars in a way that it's not really just a little bit of training or a manipulative bit of training, as may or may not be the case in the Russell Brunson scenario. And again, that's up for interpretation, but it really should be content that helps them address a question or a problem they have. And then they can decide whether they want to go further by engaging you, your services, your product, to help them solve that problem. But you want to give them the opportunity not just to hear a sales pitch, but to learn something from you. What does that do? Well, it adds a great deal of authority and trust with you when you deliver good content, as opposed to delivering content that is really just a setup for a sales pitch. Now, you're going to see later on, I'm going to actually have 2 of my 9 examples are very clearly sales pitches, but you'll see how they are not icky sales pitches. They're not like bait and switch sales pitches. So keep this in mind, because you want to make sure that you're really delivering a lot of good, valuable information as you are putting a webinar together. All right, next. we're going to dive into the different formulas. And so the very first one, and you're going to notice that a lot of these look quite similar to each other, but you'll see there's ever so slightly subtle differences around the way that they are presented. So the first one we're going to look at is the step-by-step how-to webinar. So I'll give you an example here. Imagine you are in the interior design or kitchen renovation business, and you want to get people to your webinar who are thinking about redoing their kitchen. And so you can introduce them to the process they need to go through to have their kitchen redone. So first step, you introduce them to the to what's going to happen, what's going to transpire during the webinar. You build a little bit of excitement and anticipation around what they're going to be learning. Then you focus on the actual steps, right? So, step one is you have to, and I have no idea what you actually do in kitchen renovation, so I'm not going to even guess. But there's probably the assessment of the space and figuring out, prioritizing the types of appliances or the type of cooking that you do. What are the must-haves and the like-to-haves and the absolutely don't-wants lists. And then, considering materials that you want to, right? So there's all of these different pieces to the puzzle. And if you are a professional who understands this, you can outline it all step by step, helping the consumer understand the entire process. And in turn, they're going to have an appreciation for your expertise, and B, you will set up an opportunity for them to be able to say, gosh, this is a lot more work than I thought it was. I can't possibly do it on my own. I want to engage the services of the presenter. So then you, after you kind of go through the step-by-step outline, you then offer whatever your product or your service is up for them to take advantage of. And then you conclude by recapping the general content, right? You don't have to go into a lot of detail, but simply, so today what we did was we reviewed blah, blah, blah. I showed you all the steps. And if you think that you need help, go ahead and click the button over here to schedule an appointment for us to come in and give you a quote. Right, that's the general way to conclude with a simple call to action, and it's not icky or uncomfortable to give that kind of a pitch at the end. All right, number 2, the tips and tricks webinar. So this is a very similar formula to what we just looked at, except instead of the step-by-step, we're talking about just random tips and tricks. So here's an example, 10 tips for getting top dollar when you sell your home. So this might be a realtor might give this example, or somebody who's created a course on how to sell your home yourself, right? It's the what do they call those? FSBO, for sale by owner. So you do your introduction, you then cover the various tips that you're going to cover. And there's a couple of different ways that you can do this. You can actually find among the tips one that is directly tied to what you're offering, right? So it may be, if you're a real estate professional and you specialize in selling homes of a certain type, or specialize in getting people more money than they thought they could get for their home, right? Maybe one of the tips is make sure that you work with an experienced professional who knows X, Y, and Z. By the way, it just happens that you know X, Y, and Z and therefore can help them, right? So that's a logical tip that you want to include. And that's the best way to present it in tandem with a whole bunch of other equally useful tips. And then finally, you want to emphasize the benefit of what it is that you bring to the table, whether it's your product, your service as a realtor example, for example, and then provide a call to action, what to do next and how to purchase or engage you. All right, number 3 is the tools webinar. So here's an example, top 7 growth tools every business should be using. I love to talk about tools because it gives me the opportunity not to sell my own stuff, but to actually promote other people's things or other companies' products, particularly ones that I use. You'll see a little bit later on an example of this as I'm going to demonstrate how to promote a tool that is not mine, but that I can get paid for as an affiliate, for example. So the first thing that you're going to do is go over the various tools that are going to help people address a problem that they need to address, to do things either faster or easier or better than they're currently doing them. Then you want to go through the specific tools and the reason why each of those tools would make sense for them to consider. And one of the best ways to do this actually is to get into the tool and demonstrate it. And look, this could be software, it could be actually manual physical tools that you're doing on camera, any number of ways to do this. It depends entirely on the business that you're in, right? I have a client who is in the in helping people with their physically helping them, and so maybe you could do a webinar demonstrating the different mechanisms that they use to help people improve their bodies, their bone structure, etc. Bone density is actually what they specialize in. Okay, and then finally, your conclusion is to go over the various reasons why people should use those tools and then give them a path to get access to the tools. Now, if you're doing multiple tools, giving them a bunch of different links may not be a great idea. So one of the things I recommend if you're doing a tools-based webinar is to actually have a download of a file, like a PDF, and in the PDF you can have links to each one of them, and if they're affiliate links, even better, right? Because you get paid for every time somebody clicks and then goes and buys. And then maybe you also might want to include a call to action on there about ways that you can help them. So, thanks for attending the webinar. Here are my list of tools and links where you can go pick them up. And you just have them all listed. By the way, if you found this useful and you could you'd like to explore how I can help you in other ways, click here to schedule an appointment with me, right? So that could be your handout that you give them at the webinar so that they have easy access to all of the tools that you've outlined and a path to potentially work with you as well. All right, let's move on to the mistakes webinar. So here's an example, top 5 fat loss mistakes you're making right now. Now, this is a highly impactful way of positioning a webinar because when people see that they might be making mistakes on a problem that they're trying to solve, they're curious, am I making these mistakes? There was a very famous headline of a correspondence course that sold for many, many, many years, and the headline on the ad was, "Do you make these mistakes in English?" And it was intended to help people who were not native English speakers learn how to speak English properly. Well, as soon as somebody sees that headline, they're going, I don't know, am I making these mistakes? That is a headline formula that's classic, that has been embraced by many, many marketers. And when you use the "are you making these mistakes" positioning, people are highly likely to say, I don't know, maybe I should sign up or maybe I should buy, right? So it's a great way to position a webinar. So the first thing you want to do is build basic fear or concern about whether they're actually making these mistakes. And then you want to talk about what the mistakes are. So you're going to share the various mistakes. Then you want to introduce a resource or your service, for example, that can actually help them avoid the mistakes. And if what you do is going to help them, avoid all of the mistakes, great. If it's, one particular mistake that you want to emphasize and tie it directly to your offer, again, that's fine too. But understanding how to connect the training to what it is you're offering is really, really important, because you want them to logically follow you throughout the entire presentation. And then finally, in conclusion, you want to reiterate the danger of making various mistakes and then call them to action to go ahead and purchase whatever it is that you have told them about. All right, let's move on to the XWays webinar. So this is X number of ways to do something. So 5 ways to shave strokes off your golf game. And this is going to obviously start with something that people desperately want, right? So I need to solve this problem, or I need to achieve this goal. Well, you want to tease the idea of what you're going to be showing them. Hey, guys, today, if you're an avid golfer and you are out there, at the range on the golf course, particularly, in one of those quote unquote friendly games with a business associate. Well, if you're looking for a leg up on shaving off some strokes, you are in the right place, because today I'm not going to show you just one. I'm going to show you 5 different things, and in combination, this could be a really powerful rate. So that's how you might tease out the idea of what's going to happen in the webinar. Okay, then you're going to focus on the ways, and there's a couple of things that are important to know. If the ways are, in order, then they're all connected to each other. Great. So you want to walk through how they're associated with one another. However, if it's you can do this or that, for example, right? There's not a connection. They can't be used together or in tandem with each other. You want to present it as if you were sort of talking about the pros and cons of each, right? So again, very useful information, and it gives people an insight into the way that you think and the way that you position your approach to addressing a particular problem or reaching a particular goal. And then you want to find one of the ways that you want to really focus on, tout the benefits, and then promote something that is related to that approach, that way, that method. That would be your product or your service, obviously. And then recap everything and show them where to go to buy, right? So you see, it's a pretty obvious pattern once you get used to it. Now let's do the interview webinar, because this is an interesting one. This is a little bit outside of the pattern of what we've been doing. Excuse me a second. So with an interview, you could either be interviewing somebody else, or they can be interviewing you. You could be interviewing somebody and getting paid a commission for the referral, or they could be interviewing you and you could be, making sales. Maybe you're paying them a commission. Who knows? And there's so many different permutations. We don't have to get into that piece of it, but simply trading on somebody else's audience, somebody else's notoriety is often a very effective way to pull off a webinar. So start with building credibility by talking about, their credentials, their experience. And this is really not about bragging. You may recall back at the beginning of this recording, I actually shared a little bit of my background. I told you that I've been marketing since 1996. I know a thing or two. I've been there and I've done that. And so having the ability to sort of talk about somebody's background and give them give the audience a bit of insight into what this person knows and how they know it, and what the context is for the work that they've done, can be very, very powerful at getting people to say, oh, well, this clearly is somebody I should be paying attention to. So then you want to go through whatever the interview process is, and I would highly recommend that you map this out in some way in advance of the webinar, right? You don't just show up and say, hey, I'm going to ask you some questions and you can answer them, right? You don't do it off the cuff, particularly because you want to make sure that certain points come out during the interview. So figure out the structure in advance, and it can be loose, but you want to make sure, hey, we need to touch on this point, and this point in order for people to really recognize the value of what we're going to offer at the end. That's very, very important. So at the end, you want to thank the guest and then promote their product. Or again, if you're the guest and somebody else is interviewing you, promote your product as well and tell them exactly what to do next. The case study webinar. So this is one of 2 that are much more directly associated with the product or the service, and people know in advance that what they're being shown is how your product or service can be used. And so they're really coming to not learn the case study as much as learn how you were able to accomplish something for a client, for example, or how your product can do things for people in general, right? So here's an example, how Dr. B quadrupled his sales in less than 8 months. And this is actually a real case study from a client of ours. We've been running ads and managing a webinar funnel, of all things, to build his practice and or build his coaching program, I should say. And so this was a case study that I actually put together and then presented. So the first thing you want to do is introduce what it is that you're actually offering as the product or service, because that gives context to the case study. And then you want to introduce the case study company or person. And here's something really, really important. You want to make sure that the example in the case study and the people who are there in the audience, that they're a right fit, that they're a match, that they are basically one and the same. So if I'm going to do a presentation to an audience of attorneys, for example, I don't want to be doing a case study about an e-commerce or Shopify store and show them, hey, I did this amazing stuff with this Shopify store, because they're not going to get it. They're not going to see how that relates to their business. So if you can figure out a way to really get the audience that's in front of you, get them a story, get them a case study that is really reflective of their type of business or their type of situation, you're going to be much, much more successful in your presentation and conversions of sales. Now, the next thing you want to think about is kind of juxtaposing the before and after situation. So, whenever I hear before and after, I immediately think of weight loss, because that's or makeovers, because that's a visual way of representing things, and it's a shortcut for the brain to say, oh, well, before it looked like this, and now it looks like that. Well, you can do that with data as well. And so, in this case, we had a before situation where we were looking at the data of how much it cost Dr. B to acquire a new client. And then we looked at how many bookings were getting on his calendar for him to have sales opportunities. And then we were looking at what the percentage of conversions of those calls were into a client reality. And then we looked at the after. And that's where we got the quadruple value, because really what we were doing is we were tweaking three different areas. We were tweaking the ads, the targeting. We were tweaking the conversion, or the funnel process, and then the conversion piece as well. Getting the right people on the phone call and getting more of the wrong people to not show up for the phone calls in the first place. So that's how we helped quadruple the sales. Okay, and then finally, if you can provide some proof, so and proof is incredibly powerful, by the way. You're going to be in great shape. So if you have a testimonial from the person, if you have a video of them getting on and actually saying, yes, not only did this happen, but it happened to me, and I'm so lucky and fortunate to have worked with this company, etc. That sort of thing is great. And then what are you going to do? Obviously, there's going to be a call to action. Hey, if you would like to see results like the ones that I just shared here, we'd love the opportunity to explore and see if we can help you as well. Here's what to do next. Okay, so that's one of the two more overt ways of positioning a webinar. This one isn't, but then the next one will be. So this is also kind of an interesting one, a group coaching webinar. So if you're a service provider, or you're a coach, or you do consulting work, and you want to demonstrate what it is that you do, you could basically have what might be a coaching a call, might be just simply a Q&A, a question and answer call, where you get a bunch of potential clients on the call and demonstrate what you can do, demonstrate your knowledge. A good way to do this is to actually get the questions not live on the call, but in advance, or at least start collecting them in advance, and then saying, hey, if you have questions on the call, we'll cover them if we have time, but I want to give everybody who submitted questions in advance the opportunity to make sure that we answer those. Here's the reason why you want to do this. Because if you are collecting questions in advance, you're actually guaranteed to have content. If, however, you get a bunch of people who show up and then you say, okay, guys, who has questions? And you just get crickets, where you get nobody asking a thing, well, then you got to figure out how you're going to fill that time. So you really probably do want to get them in advance. Now, there's another scenario here, which is that you can do what's called a hot seat, where you can actually, instead of just having people sitting there listening and typing, notes to you in the chat, messages to you in the chat, you could bring somebody up on camera and have a conversation with them and really diagnose their situation and give them feedback in front of other people. That can be very powerful, but you really need to be prepared for it and make sure that you have somebody who has a useful and meaningful question or situation to be able to really demonstrate the power of what you can do. So that, again, if you can work that out in advance, is going to be better than doing it live. So you might simply, have a survey. Hey, if you like a hot seat, as part of the sign up for the webinar, you say, hey, if you'd like a hot seat during the session, share your question here that you'd like to address, and I'll pick one or two that seem most compelling for us to be able to share with the entire audience at the webinar. Right. So that might be a great way to position that. And then how do you then convert this into the next step, the sale? Well, there's one of two ways. You can simply just, sort of do your thing and let the quality of your answers speak for themselves, and then give people an opportunity. Hey, thanks for coming. I hope you found great value here. By the way, if you're interested in exploring further how I might be able to support you or help you address the problem or question at hand that we covered on this webinar, here's a link to my calendar. I'd love the opportunity to chat further, right? Or to explore, or more specifically to explore if we might be a good fit for me supporting you. So that's one way to do it. The other way to do it is to actually pepper that idea or that concept in throughout the entirety of the call. So what you might do is sort of presuppose that anybody and everybody who's on the call is going to take the next step. And so you can say something in your answers like, hey, that's a really good point, and I'm going to address the front end of it right now. But because I don't know your situation well enough, I can't go really deeper, so deep enough to give you as much value in my answer as I could potentially if I knew more. So what I would suggest is, after this, you make sure to book time with me on my strategy session or a discovery call with me so that we can talk a little bit further about the question that you've just asked and see if I can be of help to you, and we might be a good fit for working together, right? So you say that several times throughout the call. People are going to, sort of understand that's the process. That's what's going to happen next. And so you're going to very likely, because you're influencing the action of the attendees by sort of presupposing that that's what most of them are going to do, many more will say, oh yeah, I guess that's the next thing I need to do, and they'll go and sign up for a call with you. Okay, last one. This is number 9, the Fear Logic Gain webinar. Now, this is another one where people already know that they're going to be learning about your product or your service, so we don't disguise that. What we do is we sort of position it for why they need to do it now. And this is great because you get people showing up who are actually probably more likely to buy. You're going to not get as many people to show up usually on these types of calls, but you're going to get the right people to show up. Now, here's an example: how to amplify your sales with Webinar Ninja. Webinar Ninja was the tool that I was using when I made my silly mistake and didn't share the slides properly. However, it's not their fault. It was my fault entirely. So the first thing you want to do is talk about what the product is. And then the next thing is to talk about the benefits of the product. So that's the gain piece of Gain, Logic, and Fear. Logic is where you're going to go into a little bit of rationale about why the product makes sense. So what the benefits are, talk a little bit about some of the statistics around it, some data that might be useful, like how many users Webinar Ninja has, how long they've been around, the technology it's built on. So you're going to talk a little bit about that stuff as well, so that people understand, oh, well, this is something that I really need to take seriously. That's a really solid solution for the problem or the challenge or the situation I'm in. And then the fear. And this is the most important one. And this, probably of everything we've been talking about, may seem the most manipulative, but believe me, it's not. Really what you're trying to do is to get people who want to take action, get some form of incentive in front of them so that they do take action. And I'm going to show you how I'm going to do this in just a minute when I show you the offer that I want to put in front of you. And there are several ways to do this. Now, one way is to have a limited time pricing offer, or a limited time, we're going to throw in these extra things, or before the countdown clock hits 0, this special additional option or cheaper option is in place. That incentivizes people to buy now. And that's something you really want to figure out. All right, if people are just showing up, they're going to learn some stuff. And then I say, oh, and the regular price is $100, and today you can get it for $100, right? Why are they incentivized to buy right at this moment? Not because they just spent some time with you. You need to give them a reason to buy now. And so the fear piece is really not scaring them. It's fear of missing out, FOMO, F-O-M-O. And that is something that I think, it sounds icky when I say fear, but when you really think about it, we need to incentivize decisions. And remember, this is something that as marketers, we need to be thinking about. People buy on emotion and then justify later using logic. So the fear piece here is actually a very important one, because you need to get them emotionally connected to making that decision in the moment, rather than giving them, weeks or months or years to make the decision because you didn't incentivize them. And then finally, a call to action, as is clear. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about my favorite webinar tool, Webinar Ninja, that I've been using for several years now. And I'm going to jump over to their platform. Actually, let me show you their sales page first, so you can sort of see what it's all about. They're now on their 6.0 version. This is actually a really cool tool that was built specifically for the founders who created this. They're a couple. I don't know if they're married. It's maybe boyfriend, girlfriend. I don't know if they're husband and wife. They bootstrapped the whole thing. They were one of them was a teacher, and he was looking for ways to teach ideas around business management. And as he was looking for a solution, he didn't like any of the software tools he found out there. And he said, okay, I'm going to build my own webinar platform. And then he used it as a case study to actually talk about how he built out a business. So really cool, to begin with. And they've really designed it to be, hey, this is not a slick marketing thing where it shows automated webinars with fake chat, in the background when nobody's really there. This is an easy to use, streamlined platform that I absolutely adore because of its simplicity. So I'm going to show you. I'm going to set up a webinar in a quick second here. But it takes very little to set up. You basically pick the time and the day. You can have a few different types of webinars. A live webinar. You can do an automated webinar where it's pre-recorded. You can do a series of webinars. So let's say, here for the next 3 days or the next 3 Tuesdays at 1 p.m., I'm going to do this webinar. You also have this really cool thing called a hybrid webinar. And the hybrid webinar is a recorded piece of content, but you can be there live in the chat answering people's questions. And so you have, if you're really bad at multitasking, that's a great solution for you. You can pre-record it and then be there to answer people's questions. So that's the general sales page. There's a lot more info here about integrations, and I'm mousing over these different pieces. You can have paid webinars. You can drop an offer in at a certain time, for example, or you can do it live. You can have different ways of doing chat. There's a lot of analytics, and again, remember that data that I told you. You can design your own landing pages, registration pages. I'm going to show you that in a moment, but let's dive in here. So I got my one automated webinar that had been running since November, but I want to create a new webinar here. So what we're going to do is I'm going to just make it a live webinar. We're going to call this David's Amazing webinar. Okay, and there I am. I'm already the presenter because it's my software tool or my account. I can add co-presenters if I want. I'm going to do this tomorrow. So this is August the 20th, and 5 p.m. is a little late. I don't know who would be sticking around for a webinar, but let's make it 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. And I can have it free or I can have it paid. I can actually I have my Stripe account attached here, and I can actually charge for it if I want. But in this case, I'm just going to make it free. And there you go. I have created the webinar. How fast is that? Now I can do a couple of tweaks to this. The very first thing that I might want to do is actually I'm going to go ahead and I don't need to publish it at the moment, but I can go in and I can design the registration page. So if I want, I can use a different background, different image. So here's my default one, is just a picture of me, and the webinar title, David's Amazing Webinar, is going to be right there. And if I want to change the color, so F17420, that's my standard color. Although when it's faded like that, it doesn't look great. That's the standard color. Okay. I can select different images. I can upload a new image. I can get rid of the image that's there. There are several different design templates that they have as well, which will show up in a moment. Because I'm recording, it's a little bit slower. Here you go. So you can see that's the standard one that I typically use. But if you want to have more information about what's there, you can even embed a video on the registration page as well. So those are some examples. I'm not going to save this. No, don't save. And I want to show you a couple of other things here because this is super, super cool and super easy. So let's say I want to now broadcast this darn thing. So it's going to open up, and I don't know what's going to show up in terms of the camera view. I've got two cameras here. It's going to look kind of funny in just a moment here. All right, so here we are inside of, it's actually pulling, let's see, from my FaceTime. Oh, it's pulling from the same camera I got here. Okay, but let's move over to the other camera here. All right, so it's now pulling from this camera. It's got this microphone in place, and I'm going to hit Enter Studio. And now I'm in the studio. Now, this is happening tomorrow, you may remember. So I'm not live at this point, but I can share my screen. I can pull in slides. I've had PowerPoint slides that I've uploaded if I want to run them here. I can show a video. Now, I can either show a video that I already have in here or a YouTube video. I can actually add the specific videos from YouTube right there. Or I can upload a video. Okay. If I have other presenters, right, I can have them present. I can actually pull presenters out of the audience if I want. I can change the layout if I were sharing my screen. So let's go ahead and share my screen just for a moment. This was the silly thing that I did earlier. Let's see what I want to share. Okay, I'm just going to share this just so I have something I can share. So I neglected to actually click this. All right, now that I've clicked it, so you can see I have this layout. Actually, let's get rid of the ignore there. I had this layout, and I can show myself in the screen if I want. So let's look at the different layouts. So I can be down in the corner if I want. Right there, I am down in the corner, or I can be on the side. So now there I am on the side, and it is showing there. Now I can be down at the bottom if I would like, over here. And if you have multiple people on a call, for example, you can have up to 4 people here on the call as well. The chat's over here. You can have public and private chat with your attendees. You can have questions that are showing up separately. You can create polls where you're actually asking questions. If you would like to have an offer, you can create an offer where they can go ahead and click, and you can reveal that at a certain time in your webinar. And then finally, if you have some handouts, like I suggested earlier, if you do one of those different tools all in a list, you can provide that as a handout with all the links inside at your webinar as well. So there you go. That's a quick look at the inside of Webinar Ninja. Now, I'm going to jump back over to my slides. Okay, because I want to talk a little bit about the incentive. Remember? Right, limited time, and so I want to give you an incentive for why should you buy now. So Webinar Ninja, actually, let me bring you back over here, just so you can see. At the time of this recording, they have, I think, 4 different packages, 3 or 4 different packages. I have their Pro package, which is this one here. Their starter package, $39 a month when you pay annually. I think it's $49 a month. Yep, when you pay month to month. So under $50, you can host webinars with 100 people there. You can actually have unlimited attendees at the pre-recorded ones. You can have up to 2 presenters, and your webinars can be up to 2 hours long. For most businesses, that's plenty. If you are looking to get a little bit bigger, you can consider the Pro package, and you can do the series of webinars and then the hybrid webinars. Actually, I don't know why I have the hybrid if I'm in this column, but that's I think I'm grandfathered in because I have an old account with them. So you can see sort of these are the different options. I think the starter of the Pro for almost everybody is a great option. So here's the thing. I want to incentivize you to grab your own account at Webinar Ninja. And so I've put together this 141-page guide on selling with webinars. I've covered some of the content in here in today's presentation by walking you through some of the formulas that I've included in this guide as well. But here's a quick look at what's in the guide. Right, so inside the 141-page guide, you're going to find the 14-day guide to creating your first profitable webinar. Now, maybe you've had a profitable webinar. I'm going to show you some cool tips and tricks to make it even more profitable if you've already seen profits from webinars. Then, how to create high-converting product pitch webinars. 10-point checklist for creating awesome webinars, 15 content recipes. We did 9 of the 15 today to impress your attendees. 50, that's 50, smart ways to promote webinars to max capacity. That's about getting people into the webinar. Then fill in the blanks for a how-to webinar script. Email swipes to get them excited in advance of the webinar, and get sales even before the webinar happens. You get them excited and then get sales after the webinar happens. Fill in the blank webinar sign-up page template. So if you're looking for a great way to format some of those pages that Webinar Ninja gives you the opportunity to customize, you get 5 different fill in the blank templates. How to create awesome slides for your webinar. And then finally, 5 worksheets that are going to help you plan a successful webinar. And that's stuff about, sort of how to be a great presenter, how to add personality to your presentation, for example. So if you want any of these things, or all of these things, all you need to do is go ahead and register a new account at Webinar Ninja, and then hit me up at baeronmarketing.com/contact or /support. Either one gets to the same place, where you can submit a copy of your receipt from Webinar Ninja, and I will gladly share this guide with you. Now, one more thing. You need to buy through my affiliate link, and that is here on the page. Depending on where you're watching the video, there may be a button below or a link below as well, but it's baermktg.com/webinar ninja, and that's going to get you to the right link so that you can take advantage of this offer. So there you go. Now you have seen me talk about a tool, present the tool, and then present incentive to take advantage of the offer. Now, if I were doing this as a real-time webinar, which I did earlier, I would have a countdown timer and say, now through Sunday only, you can get this when you buy now. But because I'm recording this and I'm putting it up on YouTube, I'm going to make this universal. But you can't get this guide unless you get it through me, through that link. And so you want to make sure that you take advantage of that particular link in order to get this guide and the additional training. And then pop on over to baeronmarketing.com/contact or /support. On YouTube, I'll leave that link there. on whatever page I put this on. I'll leave that link there. And just send me a copy of your receipt, your purchase receipt or confirmation email from Webinar Ninja, and I will get a copy of this guide off to you. So there you have it. We have been talking about making more sales more effectively in various different content formulas for webinars. I hope you have found this useful. If you have, let me know. And if you haven't, keep it to yourself. All right. Anyway, thank you so very much for spending some time with me. I greatly appreciate you and your time. And I hope that you have benefited from some of what you've learned here. And if you do choose to grab Webinar Ninja, I hope to hear from you soon and would love to support you as you are building out your own webinars. Take care.